had my Civic Si now for almost 50,000 miles, and it's been a great car, and it's treated me really, really well, but it's not perfect. So I've compiled a list of the top 5 things I hate about my Civic Si. The number 5 thing that I hate about my Civic Si is the fuel range. So even on highway driving, I can struggle to get 280 to 300 miles to a tank. I usually fill up shortly after the light comes on, and that's right around 270 to 280 usually if I'm doing highway driving. And as soon as you fill up, the range display here will indicate anywhere from 330 to 430 miles of range, and you just have to look at that and laugh because you know it's a joke. This car will not do anything close to 400 miles of range. I almost feel like the display up there, the calculator for it, was programmed for a 1.8 liter Civic, and then they just plugged it into the 2.4, and then it just goes down so fast because it realizes how much fuel this engine actually uses. I'm not exactly sure if that's the true story behind it, but it certainly feels like it. It feels like it's optimized for the 1.8 liter engine, which uses quite a bit less fuel than this, because the range counter just goes down so fast. And the next thing I don't like about my Civic Si is the amount of power this car has. I know it's been said many, many times, this 205 horsepower engine is really on the low end of outputs for this class of car, and the torque is just so low in comparison to other vehicles like this. The GTI has more torque, the Focus ST has more torque, the Mazda Speed 3 has more torque. Everything else in this class of vehicle has considerably more power than this car has. It could definitely use an extra 20 or 30 horsepower and maybe 50 foot-pounds of torque to really make it competitive against those other vehicles. But with that said, I did take it autocrossing last year, and I actually beat a Ford Focus ST there, and I also beat my friend's Lancer Rally out on quite a few runs. So it's not terrible, but on paper it looks really bad, and there was another ST there at autocross that just completely hammered me. So it's kind of a mixed bag, really. On paper it's not very good, and in the real world it's comparable to other vehicles like this, but it could really use a healthy boost of power. Number 3 is the image that this car portrays, or rather the image that this car has with it. So we all know that Honda Civics are notorious for being riced out and owned by young guys that really don't know anything about cars, and so this car has that image because it's a Honda Civic Si, and so it's just kind of a crap image that this car has. And everyone that's driven my car says it's a great car and they really enjoyed it and all that, but I get a lot of flack for having a Honda simply because of the image that this car has. And it's only worsened by the fact that I work at a GM store and I live in an area where lifted trucks and muscle cars are pretty popular, so I just don't really have any credibility with anything because I have a Honda, and so I hate having that image attached to this car. Number 2 is the wheels on this car. Don't get me wrong, I think they're a great style, and I really like the 5-spoke design they have, but I think 18s are just too big for this car, especially given the amount of power it has. I understand if it were more in terms of an STI or a Focus RS, 18s or 19s would look perfectly fine on this car, but the 18s are just a little too big, I think. I much prefer the wheels on the 2013 SI. They were a 17-inch 10-spoke design, and so I think that would give it a much more proportionate look. And also the 215 45 R17s have a much wider selection of tires than these 225 40 R18s do. So that's just something to think about. The number 1 thing I hate about my Civic Si is going to seem really petty and stupid, but when you drive this car every day, you really start to notice just how annoying this is. And so you can picture the scenario here. It's 30 degrees outside, you walk out to your car and start it up first thing in the morning, and the revs are doing 1600 RPM, no problem, and you go to take off, and so you just gently push on the throttle and the engine shoots up to 2500 RPM. So you think, alright, maybe I'll just back off, it's already got some throttle, I'll just slowly let the clutch out. And as soon as you do that, the car just falls flat on its face, and as soon as you put any amount of power towards it from that point, it's just really jerky and it rocks back and forth, and there's no way to do a smooth launch when it's at high idle when it's cold outside, all that, until the engine gets warmed up and idles normally. So no matter how you finagle it, you just can't get a smooth takeoff from a cold start with this car. And like I said, I know that sounds really stupid, but after almost 50,000 miles, I still cannot master starting smoothly when the engine is doing high idle. And that is the one thing that irritates the living crap out of me with this car. So there we have the top 5 things I hate about my Civic Si. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out the top 5 things I love about my Civic Si.